When our neighbor Mike, after a few drinks, leaned over and casually said to me, "Man, your wife is so sexy. You're a lucky guy." He meant it as a compliment, but the implication was completely different. Before I could respond, my wife Amy, who was standing there, laughed and said, "Well, Mike's my type." Her tone was playful, but it hit me like a brick. If only I had known that this would all end with them having sex in front of me. Let me start by saying I've always trusted my wife, Amy. We'd been married for 5 years, and while she could be a little stubborn and flirty, I never thought she'd cross the line. At least, that's what I believed until that night at our neighbor's party. It was a Saturday evening, and the atmosphere was lively. Our neighbor, Mike, had invited us over. He was the type of guy everyone liked, charming, confident, but a bit too smooth for my liking. I noticed the way his eyes lingered on Amy that night, but I brushed it off. After Mike called my wife sexy, and she called him sexy back, I tried to laugh, but something about the way they exchanged glances set off an alarm in my head. I didn't want to make a scene, so I pulled her aside and whispered, "What the hell was that?" She rolled her eyes and said, "Relax, it's just a joke. You're being so uptight." But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. By the end of the night, Amy had spent more time talking to Mike than to me. She kept brushing me off, and when I told her I was ready to leave, she waved me away like I was an inconvenience. That's when I started putting the pieces together. Amy and Mike had been getting too close lately. Frequent invitations to his place didn't seem suspicious at first. I thought he was just being neighborly. But now, I wasn't so sure. The next morning, I woke up to Amy humming in the kitchen like nothing had happened. She was making pancakes, her signature move when she wanted to smooth things over. I didn't bring up Mike or her behavior at the party. Not yet. Instead, I played along, joking with her over breakfast. She acted as if everything was fine, which only made my suspicions grow. Her charm could disarm anyone, and I knew she used it to her advantage. Later that day, Mike came over. It wasn't unusual for him to stop by unannounced, but this time, something felt different. He was overly friendly, almost too casual as he invited us to dinner at his place next weekend. "Bring a bottle of wine," he said, grinning. "It's been a while since we all hung out." I hesitated. My gut told me to decline, but Amy jumped in. "We'd love to," she said, her voice bright and eager. She shot me a quick look, daring me to argue in front of Mike. As soon as he left, I turned to her. "Why are you so excited about going to Mike's? Didn't last night feel weird to you?" She smirked and leaned against the counter. "Weird? You're imagining things. Besides, it'll be fun. Don't be such a buzzkill." That smug smile of hers set me on edge, but I didn't push further. Instead, I decided to use the invitation as an opportunity. If something was going on between them, I'd find out. The week dragged by, and Amy seemed unusually upbeat. She'd laugh at her phone, spend more time on her appearance, and even bought a new dress. Just because. When Saturday rolled around, she looked stunning, but something about her felt distant, like she was trying too hard. We arrived at Mike's with the wine she'd picked out. From the moment we walked in, I could tell she was comfortable, too comfortable. Mike greeted her warmly, and she returned his hug a little too enthusiastically. Throughout dinner, I noticed their subtle glances, their shared jokes that didn't include me. At one point, Mike complimented her dress, and she practically glowed. "Thanks," she said, with that sly smile I used to love. "I wasn't sure it was the right choice, but I think I made the right call." Mike chuckled. "Oh, you definitely did." It felt like I wasn't even in the room. Every moment made my stomach churn, but I kept my cool. If I reacted now, I'd look paranoid, and Amy would twist it against me. As the night went on, Mike opened another bottle of wine, and Amy started getting bolder. She laughed louder, leaned closer to him, and even playfully slapped his arm at one point. My patience was wearing thin. When we got home, I confronted her again. "What's going on with you and Mike? You've been acting weird." She scoffed, her tone dripping with annoyance. "Oh my God, not this again. You're so insecure. It's embarrassing." I clenched my fists, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm not insecure. I'm not blind, Amy. Something's off, and you know it. She didn't respond, just stormed off to the bedroom, leaving me alone with my thoughts. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I made a decision. If she wasn't going to admit anything, I'd have to catch her myself. Thursday night started like any other restless evening. Amy had gone to bed early, or at least, that's what she told me. I was still awake, scrolling through my phone in the living room, when a strange sound caught my attention. It was faint but distinct, a laugh. Amy's laugh. I frowned and stood up, following the sound towards the balcony. Our apartment shared the space with Mike's, separated only by a low railing. Normally, it was quiet this late at night, but tonight, the low murmur of voices drifted through the open balcony door. As I moved closer, I froze in my tracks. Through the curtains, I could see them, Amy, in a short, figure-hugging dress, and Mike, shirtless, his broad shoulders catching the moonlight. They were close, too close. Amy was bent slightly over the railing, her hands gripping it as if she'd been caught mid-motion. Mike was behind her, one arm wrapped protectively around her waist, holding her steady, his other hand resting lightly on her shoulder. Their bodies were pressed together in a way that made my stomach churn. What the hell is going on here? I barked, shoving the sliding door open with enough force to make it rattle. They both turned to me, startled. Amy straightened immediately, smoothing her dress with one hand while holding the railing with the other. Mike stepped back, raising his hands as if to signal innocence. Relax, Amy said quickly, her voice calm but slightly breathless. This isn't what it looks like. Not what it looks like. I snapped, my eyes darting between the two of them. Then explain why my wife is bent over with our half-naked neighbor pressed up against her. Amy rolled her eyes and stepped toward me, her tone sharp but composed. I was grabbing the wine opener I left out here earlier. It fell, and Mike just stepped in to, I don't know, protect me or something. Mike chimed in, his voice awkward and defensive. Yeah, man. She leaned over to grab it, and it looked like she might lose her balance. I didn't think, it was instinct. Instinct? I repeated, glaring at him. Instinct to take your shirt off before coming out here? He shrugged, glancing down at himself. I was at home relaxing. I didn't think I'd need a shirt to help your wife. Amy folded her arms, her expression shifting from defense to offense. You're being ridiculous, you know that? Nothing happened. Do you really think I'd be that stupid? My blood boiled, but her tone made me hesitate. She was always quick on her feet, always knew how to twist the situation. You expect me to believe this? I asked, my voice low and tense. She stepped closer, placing a hand lightly on my arm, her eyes wide and sincere. I'm telling you the truth. Don't let your jealousy turn you into one of those paranoid husbands. Mike was just helping. That's all. I looked over her shoulder at Mike, who nodded quickly. Seriously, man. I didn't mean to overstep. Amy tilted her head, her expression softening. You know I'd never do anything to hurt you. Don't ruin a perfectly good marriage over a misunderstanding. I wanted to stay angry, to call her bluff, but her words, and the way she looked at me, made me second-guess everything I'd just seen. Fine, I said finally, although the knot in my stomach remained. But this feels off, Amy. I don't like it. She gave me a small, knowing smile. You don't have to like it. You just have to trust me. With that, she turned back towards the bedroom, leaving me alone with my doubts and a very uncomfortable Mike. Sorry, man, he mumbled, retreating to his side of the balcony. I did not reply. Instead, I stared out into the night, wondering if I'd just been played by the woman I thought I knew better than anyone. The next morning, Amy acted as if nothing had happened. She greeted me with her usual radiant smile, pouring herself a cup of coffee and humming a tune. But I couldn't shake the image of her and Mike on the balcony, how close they were, how natural it all seemed. I sat at the kitchen table, watching her move around the room with effortless confidence. She didn't seem nervous or guilty. If anything, she seemed lighter, almost smug. Are we just going to pretend last night didn't happen? I asked finally, breaking the silence. Amy paused, raising an eyebrow as she sipped her coffee. What's there to talk about? I already explained it. You were the one who blew it out of proportion. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my voice steady. You were in a short dress, pressed up against Mike, and he didn't even have a shirt on. That's not exactly nothing, Amy. She sighed dramatically, setting her cup down. Do you even hear yourself? You're making it sound like some steamy affair when all that happened was a misunderstanding. I told you, I was leaning over, and he thought I needed help. That's it. Her dismissive tone only fueled my frustration. You expect me to believe that? After everything lately? The jokes at the party, the way he looks at you, the way you look at him? Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I saw the fire in her. So now I'm not allowed to have friends? Or is it just Mike because he's a man? Do you even hear how controlling you sound? This isn't about control. I snapped, my voice rising. It's about respect. It's about boundaries, Amy. She crossed her arms, tilting her head slightly. Boundaries? You think I crossed some invisible line because I'm friendly with a neighbor? Maybe you should take a look at yourself. You're the one with trust issues. I stared at her, stunned by how effortlessly she turned the blame on me. She was always quick, always sharp with her words, but this was something else. Why are you so defensive? I asked, trying to stay calm. If nothing's going on, why not just acknowledge how it looked? She sighed again, shaking her head as if I were a child who didn't understand. You know what? I'm done with this conversation. Believe whatever you want. I don't have time to convince you of the truth every time your imagination runs wild. With that, she grabbed her coffee and walked out of the kitchen, leaving me sitting there with my thoughts. The rest of the day was tense. Amy acted normal, chatting on the phone, scrolling through her laptop, and pretending like everything was fine. But I couldn't let it go. By the time evening rolled around, I decided to clear my head. I told her I was going out for a walk, and she barely looked up from her screen. Okay, she said casually. Don't be too long. Her indifference stung, but I said nothing and left. As I walked through the quiet streets, my mind raced. Was I being paranoid? Had she really convinced me that what I saw was innocent? Or was I letting her manipulate me into ignoring the obvious? I couldn't tell anymore. But one thing was certain, I wasn't going to let this go until I had answers. By the time I got home, Amy was already in bed. The apartment was quiet, but my mind wasn't. Lying next to her, I stared at the ceiling, wondering if I was sleeping next to a stranger. The tension in our house hadn't subsided, but Amy had a way of disarming me when she wanted to. The next evening, after dinner, she seemed softer, more affectionate, like the woman I'd fallen in love with. She poured us both glasses of wine, played our favorite music, and laughed easily as if the past few days of accusations and doubt had never happened. I feel like we've been off lately, she said, sliding onto the couch next to me. I don't like it when we fight. Her hand traced light patterns on my arm, and as much as I wanted to hold on to my frustration, the way she looked at me, those deep, familiar eyes, made it difficult. Yeah, I admitted reluctantly. Things have been tense. Well, she said, her voice dropping to a playful tone. Maybe I can make it up to you. She leaned in, her lips brushing mine, and before long, we were in the bedroom. For a moment, it felt like everything else melted away. No Mike, no balcony, no accusations. Just us. As things heated up, Amy closed her eyes, her breath coming quicker. I felt a flicker of hope, thinking maybe this was the reset we needed. But then, as she reached her peak, her voice broke through the haze. Oh yes, Mike! Time stopped. I froze, pulling back as her words echoed in my mind. Her eyes flew open, and the look on her face was a mix of shock and realization. What did you just say? I demanded, my voice sharp and cutting through the thick silence. She stared at me, wide-eyed, her lips parting as if to deny it. But no words came. You said Mike? I got out of bed, pacing as anger and betrayal coursed through me. Are you kidding me? Are you actually kidding me right now? Amy scrambled to sit up, her voice hurried and defensive. It was nothing. It just slipped out. You're overreacting again. Overreacting? I spun to face her. You called me by another man's name, in our bed. And not just any man, Mike. The guy you've been way too close to lately. How the hell am I supposed to ignore that? She stood up, crossing her arms and meeting my gaze head on. It was a slip. That's all it was. You're looking for a reason to be mad at me, and you're blowing this way out of proportion. I laughed bitterly. Out of proportion? Amy, you're acting like this is normal. Like people just accidentally moan their neighbor's name during sex? She rolled her eyes, her tone shifting to a biting edge. Oh, give it a rest. It doesn't mean anything. It's not like anything's happened between us. Then why did you say his name? I shot back. She smirked, a dangerous glint in her eyes. The only difference is that Mike goes deeper. The words hit me like a slap, and for a moment, I was too stunned to respond. After a beat, she added with a wicked grin. Probably. That was it. My fist clenched, and my voice shook with anger. You think this is funny? You think I'll just laugh this off like some joke? I think, she said coolly, walking toward me with a confidence that infuriated me. You're insecure, and you're looking for something to pin on me because you don't trust yourself. I stared at her, my mind racing. I didn't know whether to shout, to leave, or to keep pressing for the truth. Amy, as always, had the upper hand. She leaned close, her voice dropping to a near whisper. If you don't want to lose me, you'd better figure out how to stop being so jealous. Because I'm not going to spend my life apologizing for things I didn't do. She walked out of the room, leaving me standing there, fuming and questioning everything. Amy didn't come back to the bedroom that night. Instead, I heard the faint click of the guest room door closing down the hall. I stayed up, staring at the ceiling, replaying her words in my head. The only difference is that Mike goes deeper, probably. I wanted to believe it was a joke, her cruel attempt to deflect blame. But that nagging feeling in my chest, the same one that started at the neighbor's party, told me otherwise. The next morning, she was already in the kitchen when I got up, dressed in a flowing blouse and fitted jeans, her hair and makeup flawless as usual. She looked like she didn't have a care in the world. Good morning, she said, glancing at me briefly before going back to her coffee. Her tone was casual, like last night hadn't happened. Morning, I muttered, grabbing a mug from the cabinet. She leaned against the counter, sipping her coffee with a sly smile. You seemed pretty upset last night. Sleep okay? I clenched my jaw, fighting the urge to snap. She was baiting me, and I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction. Not really. Hard to sleep after hearing what you said. She shrugged, setting her mug down with a soft clink. I already told you, it didn't mean anything. But if you're going to keep obsessing over it, maybe you need to look at why you're so insecure. There's nothing insecure about expecting my wife not to moan another man's name during sex. I shot back, my voice sharper than I intended. She sighed, shaking her head as if I were a hopeless case. You're still on this? I can't believe I'm married to someone who blows things out of proportion like this. It's exhausting. Maybe I wouldn't have to if you didn't keep giving me reasons to doubt you. I snapped. Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time, her composed facade cracked. Doubt me? You're the one creating problems where there are none. I've been nothing but honest with you, but you're so busy playing detective you don't even see it. Honest? I laughed bitterly. You call this honesty? Hiding on the balcony with Mike, moaning his name in bed, making cruel jokes about him being better than me? How is any of that honest? She stepped closer, her voice low and cutting. You want honesty? Fine. The truth is, you've been suffocating lately. Always watching, always questioning. It's pathetic. The words stung, but I refused to let her see it. You don't get to turn this around on me, Amy. You've been acting shady for weeks, and I'm not the only one who's noticed. Her eyes flashed with anger, but she quickly masked it with a smirk. Oh, really? Who else? Mike? You think he's on your side? Her confidence was unnerving. She was always so good at steering the conversation, making me doubt myself. But this time, I wasn't going to let her win. I don't care what Mike thinks, I said firmly. But I care about this marriage, and right now, it feels like I'm the only one who does. Amy's smile faded, replaced by something colder. Maybe that's because you're the only one making it a problem. You're so busy looking for cracks that you don't see the foundation you're breaking yourself. She grabbed her purse and keys, brushing past me toward the door. Where are you going? I asked, my voice tight. Out, she said flatly. I need space to think, and you should do the same. The door closed behind her, leaving me alone with my coffee and the heavy weight of uncertainty. For the first time, I started wondering if she was right. Was I being paranoid? Was I tearing us apart with my suspicions? But then I thought about Mike, about the way they looked at each other, about her words last night. No. Something wasn't right. The next day, I decided to take a different approach. Amy wasn't going to admit anything willingly, and my suspicions weren't going to go away on their own. If I wanted answers, I'd have to get creative. That evening, as Amy and I sat in awkward silence over dinner, I casually brought it up. Mike hasn't been over in a while. Maybe we should invite him for a drink. You know, clear the air. Her fork paused midair, and she gave me a curious look. Clear the air? What's there to clear? I shrugged, keeping my tone light. Things have been weird since the balcony thing. Maybe if we all hang out, it'll help. Besides, you always say he's fun company. She hesitated, her eyes searching mine, but then she gave a small nod. Sure, why not? Let's invite him over. The following night, Mike arrived, a bottle of whiskey in hand and that ever-present charming smile plastered across his face. Amy greeted him warmly, and I noticed the way her eyes lingered on him just a little too long. We settled into the living room, the bottle quickly finding its way to the coffee table. The conversation was easy at first, light jokes, work stories, and random banter. But as the whiskey flowed, the mood loosened, and I felt the time was right to push things further. I poured another round for all of us, raising my glass. All right, I've got an idea. Let's make this more interesting, truth or dare. Mike chuckled, leaning back in his chair. What is this, a middle school sleepover? Amy laughed too, swirling her drink. Come on, it could be fun. Unless you're scared, Mike? He smirked at her. Scared? Of course not. Let's do it. I leaned forward, the faint buzz from the alcohol giving me a bit more confidence. All right, Amy, you go first. Truth or dare? She grinned, her cheeks flushed. Truth. I thought for a moment, deciding to start light. What's the most embarrassing thing you've ever done at a party? She rolled her eyes playfully. Easy. That time I spilled red wine all over my boss's white dress. She didn't even get mad, though. I think she felt sorry for me. We laughed, the tension easing a little. But I wasn't going to let the game stay so innocent for long. Your turn, Amy said, pointing at Mike. Truth or dare? He scratched his chin, grinning. Dare. Amy's eyes sparkled mischievously. I dare you to take a shot, and tell us a secret about yourself. Mike raised an eyebrow but complied, pouring himself a shot and downing it in one go. He set the glass down, wiping his mouth. All right, a secret? Let's see. I once got a tattoo I regretted so much, I had it removed a year later. It was awful, some cheesy tribal thing on my back. Amy giggled, leaning closer. No way. I want to see pictures of that. Mike smirked. Good luck finding them. I made sure they're all destroyed. The game continued, the dares and truths getting bolder as the drinks kept coming. I waited for the right moment, for the buzz in the room to lower their guards. When it was finally Mike's turn again, I leaned forward, my voice calm but deliberate. Truth or dare, Mike? He chuckled. Truth. Have you ever had feelings for someone you shouldn't have? I asked, my eyes locking on his. The question hung in the air for a moment, the playful atmosphere suddenly shifting. Amy shot me a quick glance, her smile faltering just slightly. Mike hesitated, then gave a casual shrug. Haven't we all? It happens. But it doesn't mean you act on it, right? His answer was smooth, nonchalant, but it didn't satisfy me. I decided to keep pushing, but carefully. Amy, perhaps sensing where I was headed, quickly redirected the game. Okay, my turn! Truth or dare, babe? I smirked, leaning back. Truth. She grinned, her voice teasing. If you could change one thing about our relationship, what would it be? It was a clever deflection, forcing the spotlight onto me. But I wasn't about to let her control the narrative. Honestly? I'd change how much we keep from each other. Her smile faltered, but she recovered quickly, giving a soft laugh. Well, isn't that deep? The game continued, but I couldn't shake the tension brewing under the surface. I knew Mike was holding back, and I was certain Amy was playing a game of her own. But the night wasn't over yet. I just needed to find the right moment to unravel whatever they were hiding. The whiskey had worked its magic, and the game of truth or dare was in full swing. The air felt lighter now, the earlier tension seemingly evaporating. Amy was laughing freely, her cheeks flushed from the drinks, while Mike leaned back, his grin easy and relaxed. Somewhere in the chaos of dares and confessions, I started to believe maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe this really was just an innocent friendship, and I'd let my jealousy blow everything out of proportion. Amy turned to Mike after completing a dare to imitate a cheesy romance scene. Your turn, Mike? Truth or dare? He smirked. Dare. She tapped her chin playfully. All right, I dare you to confess your biggest crush from when you were a teenager. Mike chuckled. Easy. The lifeguard at the local pool. She had this red one-piece that, man, I could write poems about it. Amy giggled, leaning into her seat. Oh my God, that's so cliché. A lifeguard? Hey, lifeguards are heroes, Mike said, raising his hands in mock defense. They go deeper than most people. Amy burst out laughing at the double entendre, her laugh contagious. Mike joined in, their shared amusement filling the room. Even I found myself chuckling, though a tiny voice in the back of my mind nagged at how comfortable they seemed. All right, I said, lifting my glass. Let's stop roasting each other and have another drink. I'll grab a bottle from the wine room. Amy waved me off with a playful smile. Hurry back, we're just getting to the good stuff. I stumbled slightly as I made my way to the wine room, the alcohol starting to catch up with me. My thoughts felt hazy, but for the first time in days, I wasn't angry. The game had done its job, proving there was nothing going on. They had laughed openly, teased me, and answered every question without hesitation. By the time I grabbed a bottle and turned back toward the living room, I felt a strange sense of peace, even a touch of happiness. Maybe I was wrong, I thought. Maybe they're just friends, and I'd been paranoid for nothing. But that feeling shattered the moment I walked back into the room. The bottle slipped from my hands, hitting the floor with a dull thud, though the sound barely registered in my mind. There, on the couch, was Mike, and Amy. Amy was straddling him, her short dress bunched up around her hips, Mike's hands gripping her thighs as he thrust into her. Their movements were rhythmic, urgent, as if they'd been waiting for this moment. She threw her head back, moaning softly, completely oblivious to my presence. Mike's hands tightened on her waist, and he grinned up at her. I told you, he murmured with a low chuckle. I go deeper. Amy laughed breathlessly, her body rocking against his, her fingers tangled in his hair. My vision blurred, my chest tightening as rage and disbelief crashed over me. For a moment I couldn't move, frozen by the sheer audacity of what I was witnessing. The room seemed to freeze, the carefree buzz shattered in an instant. Amy slid off Mike with a slow, deliberate ease, brushing her dress down like she just stood up from tying her shoe. Mike leaned back into the couch, adjusting his clothes with a smirk, the both of them radiating the lazy confidence of being far too drunk to care. I stood there, rooted in place, the wine bottle still at my feet. My vision blurred, a mix of rage and disbelief boiling in my chest. Amy, I said through clenched teeth, my voice shaking as I fought to contain the anger threatening to explode. What the hell was that? She yawned, stretching her arms as if I'd just interrupted her nap, and reached for a t-shirt lying on the armrest. Pulling it over her head, she smirked at me, her expression maddeningly indifferent. What's with the tone? She slurred, meeting my furious gaze with half-lidded eyes. It was his wish. Lame dare, by the way. I blinked, my fists trembling. His wish? I repeated, my voice rising. What the hell are you even talking about? Amy let out a slow, exaggerated sigh, gesturing sloppily toward Mike with her hand. Mike dared me. You know, truth or dare? It's a game, remember? You suggested it. Her words were soaked in mockery, her drunken confidence only fueling my anger. You're seriously going to stand there and blame me for this? I snapped, my voice breaking. For screwing him? Blame? She repeated with a tipsy laugh, wobbling slightly as she walked to the bar to pour herself another drink. Oh, relax. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just saying, you wanted us to loosen up and well. She raised her glass toward Mike with a cheeky grin. Mission accomplished? Mike chuckled, rubbing his jaw, clearly as drunk as she was. Come on, man, he said, his words slurred but cocky. We were just having a little fun. Don't be so uptight. Fun? I shouted, the word tasting bitter in my mouth. You call this fun? Amy rolled her eyes, taking a sip of her wine. Oh, stop being so dramatic, she said, her tone dismissive. It's not like it meant anything. It's just a stupid game. You're the one who brought out the drinks, remember? You're the one who said, let's make this night unforgettable. Well, here we are. I stared at her, my chest tight with betrayal and disbelief. You're unbelievable, I hissed. Am I? She shot back, her smirk widening as she swayed slightly. Or are you just pissed because you can't handle the game you started? Next time, maybe think twice before inviting someone like Mike to play. Her words were the final straw. I lunged at Mike, my fist colliding with his jaw before I even realized what I was doing. He stumbled back, crashing into the coffee table. Whoa, chill out, he slurred, holding up his hands in mock surrender. Jesus! Amy yelled, spilling her drink as she stumbled toward me. What the hell is your problem? I turned to her, my hand trembling as I pointed in her direction. My problem? You're standing there, acting like this is some kind of joke, after what you just did. Amy shrugged, entirely unbothered, and drained the rest of her glass. You're overreacting, she said, her tone sharp. It's not my fault you can't handle a little fun. Maybe you should stop blaming me for your own insecurities. Her words cut like a knife, her drunken smirk twisting into something cruel. Fine, I said quietly, my voice trembling with rage. You want to pretend this doesn't matter? Then neither do I. I turned and stormed toward the door. Behind me, Amy's mocking voice rang out, dripping with sarcasm. Don't forget your wine, she called, laughing as I slammed the door behind me. It's been a whirlwind since that night, like watching a life you once lived unravel in slow motion. The days blurred together, each one dragging me further from the person I thought I was. Or maybe just the person I pretended to be. Mike filed an assault complaint the next morning. I'd like to say I was surprised, but I wasn't. The guy always struck me as the type to push buttons and then cry foul when someone finally hit back. The hospital bills weren't anything outrageous, just a busted lip and a bruised ego, but they were enough to make a dent in my already strained finances. The settlement was humiliating. Writing a check to that smug bastard felt like pouring salt into an open wound. But what choice did I have? The lawyer said it was the easiest way to put it behind me, and at that point, I just wanted it all to end. As for Amy, we left the apartment the same way we had lived in it recently, together but worlds apart. I couldn't stand the sight of her anymore, and I think she felt the same. She didn't try to explain herself, and I didn't ask for an explanation. What was the point? It's funny, the things you notice when everything falls apart. The empty wine bottles by the sink, the little pile of dust in the corner she never bothered to sweep up, the stupid framed photo of us from our honeymoon still hanging lopsided on the wall. I used to think those were just quirks, part of what made us. Us. Now they feel like evidence, proof of something broken I'd been too blind to see. We're in the middle of divorce proceedings now. She hasn't fought me on anything, not even the part where I asked for all the furniture. Take it, she said with a shrug, as if none of it mattered. And maybe it didn't, not to her. I've been crashing at a friend's place while I figure out my next steps. It's not ideal, but it's better than staying in that apartment with the ghost of our marriage haunting me. Some nights, I lie awake replaying that night in my head, wondering where it all went wrong. Was it the game? The alcohol? Or was this just who she was all along, and I refused to see it? I do not know. I'm not sure I ever will. What I do know is that I'm done. Done trying to understand her, done blaming myself, done pretending we ever had something worth saving. Maybe someday I'll look back on all of this and feel something other than anger or regret. Maybe I'll even laugh about it. How I let myself get tangled up with someone like Amy, how I let a guy like Mike get under my skin. But for now, I'm just trying to rebuild. One day at a time. Also, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you in this letter, and it would be interesting to hear in the comments what you think I was wrong about. Maybe I should have fought for our marriage, I don't know. Thank you all!